Hi, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk Off the Podium. I have a friend I've known for many years, although we haven't seen each other in probably 10 years now. Jimmie Herrod is with me. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Tigran. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Where are you now? Because every time I follow you on social media platforms, you're all over the place. So where are you now?
Right now, I am in New York, sitting in my little bitty studio apartment, trying to avoid the heat.
Yeah. How long has it been since we last met? Is it about 10 years now?
I think it could be like 9 years. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's
at least probably college at least.
Yeah, it's you've had an amazing journey, and we'll get to that. But I want to know what you've been up to recently, the past couple of months, and what have you been doing?
Yeah, I have just been keeping my sanity going in here. Been playing a lot of piano, been writing. Just these last few months with everything sort of shut down, I think a number of us have little online projects here and there, but I've done like some writing for some other people for a little project based out of Seattle called Style, which is like a kids program. I've been writing for myself in general and recording a little bit in my apartment. Nothing worth listening to. Yeah, mostly just been indoors. I just was in Seattle very briefly for like a week just to get a change of scenery and to get out of here really, and yeah, get some fresh air on the northwest side.
Everything happening in the world, we'll get specifically to different things happening, but with specifically COVID-19, it's tough because people are artists and people in general are trying to find new ways to do something and contribute and also make a living. It's been really tough for a lot of artists, as you know. What if any positives, what positives would come out of this whole situation for artists? Are there positives? Because I've had some guests who have come on and said various things that might be positive. What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. I mean, I think one thing that before I even think about the career so much of artists and making money and all that sort of thing, I think this has been a really introspective time for a lot of people, which is probably really good for their artistry. I know I have felt much better about spending my time writing my own music and, delving into that instead of thinking about the things I could be working on of someone else's and things of that nature. But I guess in the visible way, I think this change to the online platform has made a really big difference to people who probably before disregarded it completely and hate having an online presence. People like myself needing to give that a little bit more attention and try to do that. But I think I'm seeing a lot of people try and express themselves through the platforms like Instagram and Facebook. I think a lot more different than before. Much differently. I'm like early over here, even though it's one. I think that has made a massive difference. I see people putting some serious effort into creating like online content that's not just for the sake of content, I think in some ways, but some people are finding it is a really expressive place to be right now as we're all separated. And I think this online concert thing has been really interesting to see. People really curating performances in that space. And I think now that some places have slightly less strict social distancing guidelines, I'm seeing people who I've collaborated with get together and they're all spaced out and playing a show and filming it really well. So there's like an archival aspect of that I think is really cool too, to have forever. But I think it might change how we approach going to see music and appreciate music in some ways.
What do you miss the most about performing? What aspect? I mean, is it the collaboration with the musicians? Is it the audience? Is it just being on the road? All of it?
I think each of it has its different impact on you as a performer, as a writer, as whatever. The audience is pretty amazing because you get this instant response of how you made other people feel. And I think collaborating with other people is sorely missed. I mean, I'm like, maybe I should get better at piano so I don't miss actual pianists. Yeah, it's been really, really different, really interesting to be disconnected in this way from those normal, like, instant responses you get from performing. But yeah, I mean, probably, yeah, the collaboration and the audience, like, all of that happening at once is really special. I could kind of take or leave traveling around sometimes. Depends on where you are, depends on how long you've been gone, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's been I do a little live video every once in a while, and it's funny how much I realize, like, I get something out of that, because you get some sort of response and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't shared myself with people in so long. And that I think that's a big part of why we do what we do, is it's a way of expressing ourselves, and you know, it's our medium for that.
Yeah. You're a thinker. I like that about you. Always felt that. And recently, with all the protests happening, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this. With all the protests happening, and you also just, I think it was last night, I was going through Facebook before sleeping, and I saw that you posted something about Boston Conservatory, I think, and I kind of read through that. So not specific to that incident, but just in general, your thoughts on what can we do as artists to make this place, through what we do, a better place, a more welcoming place?
Yeah, that's a question. I think as someone who's like danced on both sides, so to speak, I've done some stuff in theater. I've done a little opera. I've done a lot of jazz too. I've done some pop stuff. I think I see some of the same tropes exist in all those spaces. Somebody else had mentioned in an article I read recently about, you know, how they're tired of playing servants, for example. And in my theater experience, the majority of shows I've been in, I have either been a servant or indentured in some sense, or just a person of color in a space, versus a voice that is actually a contribution to the conversation. You're just sort of like, you know, a mannequin. And I think that, you know, that's probably even more true for some other people of different ethnicities who, you know, there's no shows even that reference their history and their stories and their value to the conversation and community. So I do think, you know, I didn't have necessarily an experience in college like the Boston Conservatory thing, though I fully believe in that, because I've had experiences like that outside of college. And you know, I think it really starts with each of us looking at who we work with, and even to take out sort of the racial dynamic that is being addressed obviously right now, which is so important. You know, I think it's making a massive difference, just the fact that it's a conversation right now. But I recall when I was making my little EP thingy that I made, that really was, I just made it to sell some CDs, merchandise. I recall later thinking I didn't have a single woman or a female identifying person on my album. And I thought about, you know, like, yes, so much of the music environment that I have grown up in has been quite male dominated, and the women in it feel quite led, in my opinion, to just sing, for example. And, you know, I know of some schools where, like, if you sing, you get a lesser education because they don't, I don't know if this is still the case at said school that I will not say the name of, but, you know, they put the vocalist in a remedial class because they don't believe that you need that information or are competent for that information. And what does that do in continuing the spacing of not even just like who plays what, but between the gender dynamic that is sort of further perpetuated by that, seeing women and saying you're just a singer or a vocalist and not a musician, which I get all the time too. And knowing that, you know, we each, even on that level, have a part that we need to be we need to do. We need to reinforce spaces that seem all inclusive in so many ways. You know, we should probably stop doing shows that if they're going to have people of color, they are just slaves. Why are we not doing, you know, why is the same work being done over and over in some senses too? I'm sure that there are people out there writing unique new things that through refinement, you know, could be the next whatever, you know, in our different, you know, realms of audience. So yeah, I think it really starts with looking inward and saying, okay, how am I aiding this or contributing negatively to this? And what can I as an individual do to change the base of my environment?
Yeah, that's a great point. After our time in Seattle, I think a couple of years later, you moved to Portland and you did your master's there, and then you were also teaching a little bit, from what I understand. As you know, putting your educator hat on, I guess, thinking about the system, maybe not specific to Portland State, but what can educators do? Again, to kind of diversify the information that some of the students get, and also just make it a more welcoming experience. What have you done as a teacher, and what can be done better in the college system, I guess? And we're not even talking about early on. Maybe we could even get to that, but just specific to college.
Yeah, I'll use a couple of examples. I recall being in school and not you know, and I'm not going to say where. Anyway, I remember being in school and someone, I think their intention was to give me a song that they thought I would identify with. But that song just happened to be sort of the tokeny, like, black jazz standard. And, you know, it was just so funny to me because it's like, I would never pick this song. And I felt like it was given to me. A number of songs like this were suggested, you know, songs about church and things like that, you know. Someone was reinforcing for themselves in a way what they think I identify with. Yeah. And something that is really, really problematic is us wanting to generalize each other and not get to know the individual. The more we can actually get to know someone and see what they like, who they are, how they express themselves in those environments through music as our medium, the better we're going to serve them as an individual, because they are individuals. They are not, this is not an assembly line. You know, I don't know anyone who's come out of school with the exact same skill set as someone else, because we all have different interests and we're going to be leaning towards different directions. So, you know, I try to, and I was teaching voice, which I think often vocal students don't seem to get as much theory, for example. And I wanted to perpetuate the opposite of that. And so, like, I tried to make my voice lessons a little heady in that sort of math way. And I wanted them each to feel like they were capable of that. I witnessed that when I was at Cornish, when Janae Kendrick started teaching there. I say this all the time, she was having freshmen sing in 7/8, you know, and 5/4, you know, using their brain. And I thought that was really empowering, making everyone feel an equal capability, having no assumptions that certain people, based on their background, might not be as capable. Like, I know there's some of that, these assumptions of like, oh, we have to, you know, well, they don't have as refined of a background. That might be true, but let's get them to where everyone else is, because they are capable. They just don't have the same foundation as some other people who might have had lessons their whole childhood, for example. You know, I wasn't one of those kids who had lessons, but I did band, and even playing clarinet put me ahead. So we have to, I think, as teachers, in those environments, we really need to look at people as singular people. We can't group think anyone and generalize, especially once you hear someone, you're like, okay, they can only do this. Like, oh no, they probably have a strength you're not seeing.
Yeah.
So let's support them and get them where everyone else is and create a real equal environment.
One thing I kept thinking, singing is a really tough thing. Because, when you're an instrumentalist, of course, the environment, the weather, and all these other things affect your instrument. But as a singer, it's like, it's really a part of you. So
Yes.
it's so much tougher in some ways than actually being an instrumentalist, because you have to kind of take care of it. You can't just pack up your violin, put it in the case, and put it home. You're like walking with your instrument. You're living with your instrument.
Right.
So tough. It's so tough. How do you protect and care for your instrument in the daily life? Are there like really things that you think about, that you have to constantly think about, not to drink like cold, beverages or something, or
right.
you think about these things?
Yeah, and I was gonna say with that, in these, you brought up a point maybe on the side unintentionally, but I think about the mindset behind practice. I feel like it's really big in the instrumental world, and I think unfortunately singers have been singing their whole lives. It's just it's their body. So you have to create a rhythm within yourself that says, I'm going to be militant about this. I'm going to, it's like, I've been learning a language for the past 2 years. Like, if I want to do this, I have to do it every day. And my brain did this equation of like, okay, so I've been singing my whole life. That comes naturally. Then I was like, okay, then I started learning music theory, and like, okay, so how many years have I spent doing that? And now I'm like looking at this language, and I see like the disparity between them, and how much time, one happens. And so to get on your actual question, I'm kind of annoying about protecting my voice in some ways. If I know I'm gonna sing, I like avoid dairy for days, because I discovered I have like an allergy reaction to dairy, that like my throat gets like red and swollen basically.
Wow.
So I avoid dairy. I know I should sleep if I can. I drink a lot more water. And one thing I had to start doing before shows is having coffee right before the show, so I would feel like really awake. Sometimes the shows are late and you want to fall asleep.
Going in a bit of a different direction, I want to know what Jimmie does when it's not music and arts related stuff, hobbies or pastime activities. What do you do?
Oh no. Well, quarantine has been a bad example of this, because there's not been much else to do. But the last 3 months in particular, I've been playing a lot of video games.
Wow, okay.
I'm not gonna lie. A lot of Animal Crossing. That game came out, and the characters are too cute to ignore. I also watch a lot of anime. I have realized it's like my second love is anime. I listen to, and I'll be honest, listen to self-help books here and there. Sometimes read them myself, but I like self-help books. Read one twice during the pandemic, and I used to draw a lot. That was like my really big thing growing up. But now I feel like it's writing words, and that sort of supplemented that space. I guess replaced it. That other artful expression, but yeah.
You're currently working with a group that I really didn't know about much. That's Pink Martini.
Actually.
And the way I found out about this group is because they did a song in Armenian, and then
yes. Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah. So when they did this song, it was all over this, and Armenians being a small group of people, there aren't too many of us around the world. So if someone outside of Armenia kind of remembers Armenia or even does something Armenian, it's all over the news. So they did a song.
What is the first lyric? Do you remember the first lyric?
Of Sirun Sirun.
Big. What is the first lyric though? Oh. So I sing that song with the group, but I haven't sang it in like 4 months.
Okay.
So it's like everything is like.
Yeah, I have
hilarious.
to think, I can't remember now. Yes. Yeah. It was great. When I heard that, I was like, wow, this is so awesome. And then I found out about them, and that's actually such a great way of also getting fans or people interested in music when you sing someone else's music, especially if it's a small country or something. Right. So tell me a little bit about how you, I'm sure you've told this story many times, but a little bit about how you even got to collaborate with this world-class organization, I could call it now. They've
Yeah.
been around for such a long time.
Yeah, the 25 years. So a friend of mine that I met during my master's program um, is super generous, super sweet, my friend Damon, and he had met the band leader, Thomas, at a wedding, actually, of a mutual friend of his. And basically his goal was, he said, I feel like you would make sense with these people. So he pushed for, I think, months, saying like, you should really meet my friend. You should really meet my friend, like to both of us. And I didn't really know, who the band was. I had heard the name. I had heard of the main singer and the band leader and the other main singer. But I didn't know anything. And so finally, probably 9 months into my friend trying to make this happen, he's in town for a day. I'm in town. Sure, I'll come over, like very casually in my mind. And it's this giant downtown building. I was like, what is this? Well, like downtown loft. It's like, it's like 3 stories, but it's like gorgeous. And I was like, what is this? Okay. And so, he shows up. I think he was running from somewhere, maybe from the airport for all I know. Very busy guy. And we sit down and talk for a little bit and getting to know each other some. And he says, you want to play me some songs? And I was like, sure, whatever, So we played through probably like 10 songs just randomly. And my friend is there like, and he's so silly. And so the band leader, Thomas, he's like, I'm going to go get our manager or, our band manager. So he comes in and he watches them and he's like, what do you think? And like, they're both like, it's good, whatever kind of thing. And he's like, do you want to, what's the next show that Jimmie could be on? It was very, very like that. Wow. And from there, it started, I'd get a call and like, hey, can you come do this thing? It's in like a week or two. I know it's a little last minute, but it'd be great to have you. And now it's ramped up to, I'm like full time with them and made an EP with them and have gone so many places, a lot of places in Europe. I was really lucky to go to Seoul with them last year and Israel with them as well. And they have, you bring up the whole thing about singing a song in another person's language. I have witnessed how special that is when we go to these places and people aren't expecting it. When we go to Turkey, they do 2 different songs in Turkish, and same as like when we went to Seoul, and I don't think they had ever done a song in Korean, and we learned one sort of on the way there, but just to give some like, sign of effort. And, I think it does make a big difference. And there's some of these songs I might have never heard,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really lucky to have gotten to broaden my world in a sense through traveling around with them.
Mm. When you're traveling, what makes you frustrated or tired about traveling? I had Ransom Wilson on, who's this famous flute player, and he was talking about how even though he was so fortunate to have the opportunity to go all over the world and play, which not many people have the opportunity to do, but he was getting tired. He was tired of traveling, constantly being in different places, and he was just like, maybe it's a personal thing, but he just couldn't. He didn't really enjoy it a lot of the time. What's your process like? What do you enjoy? What are some of the things that you do, kind of set things that you do when you get to a place?
Yeah. I think self-preservation is a major factor when you're touring. There's this thing I think that people disconnect about. They say, oh, you travel for work, that's amazing. But I think the thing that they don't remember is that you're not going as a tourist so much. Even when we're not even abroad in a serious sense. So I'll give you an example. We were, and this is a unique example, it's not like this normally, but we had a day where we were somewhere else in Canada, not too far away. We drove from wherever this was to Quebec City. We got to Quebec City around 1:30, 2 o'clock. We had a sound check around 5:36. We've had a show at 8. The show ends 10:30. We sign autographs. We get out of there. It's probably 11:30. I'm back at my hotel. We have a 1 a.m. lobby call to leave for the next city. Wow. And like that was unique. It's not normally that back to back, but sometimes it is. That is part of it. And I think you don't always really get to see these places. So like even that element that would keep somebody maybe entertained, fades away. And even when you do, something I've really learned is that people make the place. So if you make a connection with people and you really like those people, it's a place worth being. But beauty is everywhere. You can find beauty everywhere and unique things. And it can almost get like redundant. You're like, oh, okay, another pretty city in France. I get it. Like, whatever. No, it starts to, I think the lifestyle is wearing because you are kind of constantly packing a bag, unpacking a bag. You're far away from people you might want to be around, your family, loved ones of some sort, even your close friends. I mean, I think this is a unique situation for me. So I joined this band 23 years into their career. They have a lot of tight bonds already. I think people know how to interact with everyone, of course, but there are, you have your clusters. You have people who you most of the time, sort of gel with. And I think myself and the other guest who joined at the same time as I did, who I think you would love, her name's Edna Vasquez. She's fantastic. Her and I, we gelled together. We both didn't know anyone, and it's like, oh, I got a photo of her and I over here. Anyway, yeah, I think it just gets really fatiguing because you are sort of out of your element in the sense of anything routine has been like dissolved. So you have to create those routines, be it some distance from the rest of the band when you can have it, or like me, I get teased a lot for eating the same meals over and over. But I eat them because they make me feel like I'm at home and like I'm gonna have a burger today again, but that, stuff like that helps.
One of my favorite questions is life-changing moment. And recently I've been asking people a life-changing moment, a personal life-changing moment that you're willing to share, but also maybe a musical big life-changing moment where things just clicked, took you to a different place in your career. So if you can answer two of those questions, personal and professional life-changing moments.
Yeah, I think they're actually connected. So what was it, in 18, the band asked me if I wanted to go to Europe with them, and I was actually born in Europe, but I had never been back, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know when I would ever be able to afford to go do a trip like that kind of a thing. And we went on that tour, we went to Belgium, France, Switzerland, and then we ended in California. Our tours always seem to do something funny like that. Instead of going home, we always go to LA. I don't know why. But we're in Belgium. We play like a really great show. We play another show in Belgium. It's like, this is so sweet. We get to France. We're going through all these like small towns. It's gorgeous, and it's my first time being in this culture too. But I know, and this is, I guess, the professional one, is that, we're in Paris and we're playing in this gorgeous venue, many balconies upon balconies, and the audience is, their fame is in large part to France. So they have a very big following in French-speaking countries, in France in particular. And I remember being on stage and like I had just sang, and I'm like, okay, sang, it's over. I get to like chill, and I'm sitting in the back of the stage, and China, who is like the original singer, the long-standing original singer, she is singing, and it's like my favorite song that they do, and it's in Croatian, and it's one of their originals. Once it's Croatian, And I like am looking out and I realize I'm in Paris performing on a grand stage. This is the city people die to go to, blah, blah, blah. And it just like, it was a very like big poof, like you're doing the dream. You are living the dream in that sense. And you're in such a beautiful place. And like, you know, even to get to go here as a tourist is so special to people, but to be here doing my craft and, you know, entertaining people and enjoying the moment myself too, was all really special. And I didn't predict that I'd feel that way in the back of the stage and, you know, watching and taking the sight in basically. So that's professional. And then I guess what's connected to that is what's sort of funny, and I'm gonna make that real quick, the in-between stuff. So I met someone while I was on that tour, and we started dating, and I started learning French, and I spent close to 7 months of that year in France going into the next year with this person, and really trying to immerse, blah, 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 and it was terrible in some ways, because immersion is difficult. Yeah. But after that ended, I remembered having this, I remember having this moment where, I'm trying to think, I think we were on tour, and maybe I was either in Turkey or it was Hawaii. This is a goofy tour. Turkey, Seoul, Hawaii, home. What is this? And we actually started in North Carolina, so don't ask me. Anyway, somewhere on this tour, and I realized, I was like, I actually have everything that I have ever wanted. I'm in a position where I could take care of myself. I'm in a position where I can help people I love and care about, and have been able to do that, and had done that and hadn't even realized that, you know, like it's so little what makes a big difference in some ways. And so I had realized, even though there was some heartache at the time, I had done things that I didn't think I would be able to do. And that in itself was like such a personal goal, but accomplishment was really it's satisfying, and I think it's brought a lot more happiness to my life. You know, realizing that you have to be grateful for the things that do work out and that you do have, and that you're so lucky to have in a world where many people have nothing. You know, and I'm like, this studio is small, Tigran, but you know, not balling over here. But no, yeah, it's I feel really, really fortunate to be where I am. And, yeah. I hadn't made that connection yet until I got out of that situation and really could see the whole picture and say there's so much to be thankful for in life. So.
Wow. And going back to music and our time sort of together when we spent, I think it was about a year that we overlapped at Cornish. But one thing that I always appreciated and saw in what you did was that every time I saw you perform, it was an experience. And that's what's memorable about some of the great artists and people who are able to take their art form to the next level, is that they don't care if it's 5 people sitting at some student showcase happening or 100 people. You bring 100%. Right. And that's what I appreciated about you, is that you were able to step up on that stage. And I think one time it was just about 20 people. It was a small little performance showcase or something. And you just did it. And you're just bringing 100% of your art form to the people that are listening. And that's when I realized that you really are, you know, committed to what you're doing. But it also takes that kind of commitment also takes a lot of energy, and you might get exhausted after a while. How do you deal with that, especially night after night performing and rehearsing? How do you deal with that sort of exhaustion or tiredness or whatever you call it?
Yeah, that's so I am misleadingly introverted. Like I think I have learned how to be extroverted because what we do, our job is to interact with people both as a performer and as a communicator with whoever we collaborate with. So I think I've really learned I've like manifested technique or something, or ability to be like large group social. I think a lot of that is me leaning on humor But you know, I definitely get drained. You know, I get exhausted after the show because just the performance itself is a big giving moment of a lot of you if you perform in that way. And I appreciate you saying that because I definitely am thankful that I'm in a place where I'm comfortable enough to just put myself out there, even if I'm late, even if I'm really nervous, which like literally anytime I live stream, I'm like, I'm like, somehow the camera doesn't look very shaky. But I get super nervous. But yeah, I've learned, I guess, when to take space. Some of that is, and I mentioned it too, like already a large thing is disappearing as soon as possible. And I learned that actually from watching the band too. I mean, they have done this for so long. You have to know yourself to the degree that you can take care of yourself, especially when you're isolated in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm traveling around with 20 people, you know, give or take a few, but you still are out of your bubble. You're not going home after the show and having that moment to like be in your space. So you have to really make that hotel room or whatever your sanctuary and escape the masses, you know, especially with the signing. You know, the signing is almost the bigger show because we do that almost every show where like anybody who wants something signed gets in line and we all, you know, sit there together and put on a happy face, and that can be bigger than the show for me because by that point my voice is tired. I want to go home. You know, someone's asking me about my family. I'm like, oh my gosh, people, you know. But they all mean so well. They're still having an experience, and you have to continue that experience for them and for yourself in some regard. I mean, so thankful and lucky to have people who want to talk to you. But with that in mind, you also need to know when it's time to bow out, so to speak, and restore and, you know, put your headphones on and be a nobody, you know, and, you know, watch whatever you need to watch. I mean, there was a tour that I watched there's enough days that I watched the entire season, the entire series of Sex and the City because I never watched it. And that, you know, you just find whatever you can, you know, find enjoyment to restore yourself wherever you can.
Yeah. One of the last questions I'll ask is, even though you're a young musician, what advice would you give to young musicians, you know, post-college, trying to make a career? And, you know, you've been there. So what advice would you give them if they're struggling, if they're going through tough times to put a career together like you have?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this has been true of you as well. I think you've done what I'm going to say is you need to be flexible. You need to be willing to learn about a variety of things. Almost to bring that back to the thing about learning individual people I was saying earlier, you really need to be malleable to a positive degree, where, for me in school, I originally was a jazz vocal major, and then my second year I switched to composer performer because I felt like I would get more out of a program where like I was getting, advice on writing essentially and getting challenged in new ways. But while I was doing that, I also took the Baroque performance practice ensemble and did the choir with, Eric Banks. And like, you need to be, and I did a musical at the Fifth Ave. Like you want to be in as many variant pots as you can withstand, because it's going to give you the broadest strokes of options. And I do know that some people would maybe in some ways say the opposite, because they feel like, especially when it comes to opera, there's a unique amount of refinedness. And I would actually say the same about jazz when it comes to different forms of technique and skill and vocabulary and understanding of harmony. You do have to do a deep dive. But I think a lot of people today are realizing you need to be, able to do a varying amount of things. I don't know how many people my age are making a career exclusively doing opera, for that matter. I don't know them. I'm sure they exist, But that is such a small lane, I think, of opportunity. So you want to be able to comfortably enter another space with just enough confidence and, or knowing your strengths that you can be hired and that you can do something, and you just never know what thing leads to the next thing either. So be open to something that might not sound like it's in your wheelhouse, because your wheelhouse will grow, via experience. So just like Pokemon, they need experience. Okay.
You still compose?
I do. I'm writing all the time. But I think now I would say, I think in school I was like trying to do this mix of like art songs and like jazz harmony. I think I'm doing a lot less of that now, and now I'm writing like weird songs that are like have some aspects of like a pop form, but use jazz harmony and like some odd meters here and there.
Interesting. Wow.
So it's all about words for me anyway. I just want to express myself with the music and the words. So.
Well, if it's not a secret, what's next? What's like a big project, maybe a music project related thing, a recording or something that's coming up next for you?
Oh, wow. I mean, with everything the way it is, that's a good question. I'd like to know too. I think I'm going to do some recording this year, probably going into the fall.
Okay.
Just because it feels like the time. There's some stuff that I want to record, and I want to get it, in a good rendition of it while I still care about it deeply. Yeah. Or I'm going to have to take a lot of space from it and then come back to it, and then I will, be rejuvenated in it. So probably that. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get back outside and tour again. I mean, whenever that happens, I'm really hopeful that by the new year, we are hopping on a plane again and bouncing all around the planet. And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Anything else you want to add before we end?
That's
Beautiful.
All that came to mind.
Thank you. That was awesome. Well, I hope we meet in person after all these years. It's been too long, but next time you're in Seattle, please let me know. I would love to see you. And
yes, I'll have you give me an Armenian lesson. You'll get my pronunciation.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jimmie. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you soon.
You too. It's wonderful to see you.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Off the Podium. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.